Hello, this screencast will explain the additions and changes I've made to my LMS to fulfill the Module 9 requirement. First, I'd like to mention that there's a correction from my Module 8 screencast. I said at that point that part of lesson 1.2 was going to include a thing link on the narrative techniques, but instead I created a Padlet, and I believe you will have looked at that already as part of the fulfillment for one of the modules. I forget which I created that for. Might have even been this one, but the link is here, and yeah, there are a couple different activities here as part of the Padlet, so students could learn more about different narrative techniques. Okay, so with that being said, Module 9, some of the things that I created or added, I guess, I filled out the enrichment notebook a little bit. So for Unit 1, the enrichment notebook is going to focus specifically on different things related to writing. When I mentioned in an earlier module that I use the student's letter of introduction as a writing diagnostic, so I've included activities and exercises that will help address some of the different writing skills that I looked for in particular with that writing diagnostic. So for example, one thing I'm looking for is sentence fragments. So I have an exercise for sentence fragments. I'm also looking at subject-verb agreement, comma splice errors, run-on sentences, and those are general just sentence structure issues. And actually, now that I'm doing this, I'm going to move this up here. Okay, so what I have essentially for each exercise are some questions. I have a link to the answers, and then I also have a link to a tutorial, which is basically just information about that particular skill. So students should read through this information about subject-verb agreement first, and then they go into the notebook, they complete the questions, they can check their answers. And then at the end of the enrichment exercises, I have a challenge, and this is what I would use as another formative check after students have worked through whatever they need to with sentence structure. Yeah, so they would fix this and submit it to me, and then I can see if they're actually getting it after they've had an opportunity to learn more about the skill and actually practice. So that would be one thing, a formative, and also some changes that I've made. The other formatives that I created relate to that final week of the narrative unit. So we'll go into September. Okay. So one thing that students are going to do as part of lesson 1.4 is they're first going to draft the exposition of their narrative, and they'll eventually finish the full narrative by the end of the week. I'm going to use the exposition as an opportunity to see that they understand MLA format, and in the event that the formatting is incorrect, I'm going to direct them to a screencast on MLA formatting so they can fix those errors before they turn in their final narrative by Sunday the 20th. So that's one formative. Well, I guess that would be the second one, in addition to the formative as part of the enrichment notebook. Also, at the end of the week, once they have their draft, students are going to do a read-through of their narrative. So, I don't know if I have this linked here yet. I don't. I have it in the documents. Okay. So here's the read-through activity. Essentially, it asks students to just do a quick checklist of their narrative to make sure that there are some pretty basic elements that will fulfill the requirements of the narrative according to the rubric. And then there's an opportunity for them to just kind of do some reflection on their own before they go into the peer read-through activity. So they can make some notes about perceptions about the strengths of their narratives and also weaknesses that they recognize. So they have maybe some ideas to share with their peers before they do their read-through. And then I have a protocol for the group read-through. So essentially what's going to happen is each student will read their narrative. I have some questions to help, or some questions for the rest of the group to think about as they're listening to their peers' narratives, so they can provide some focused feedback and ideas for improvement. So that's the other one of the other formatives, so students can get feedback from their peers. And then an additional formative that comes at the end of this whole process is for students to reflect on the feedback that they received. Okay, so this form allows them to reflect on suggestions for improvement that they received during the read-through that they plan to include in their narrative revisions, any ideas that they gleaned from listening to their classmates' narratives, and then this is an important one for me, just a place for students to let me know if there's anything that they still need help with in order to revise their narrative before submitting it. So if there are students that still have serious concerns, I know who they are, and I can work with them and maybe even extend the deadline for their narrative if necessary. And that is it for the formatives. So again, the read-through activity, the reflection questions, the narrative exposition, so I could check the MLA format, and then I guess there was a fourth formative with the enrichment notebook. And then the only other additions that I made to the LMS since the last video, I did decide to link the syllabus to the main page. It's included in the Unit 1 documents, but just so it's out and easy for students to access. And I think this also was added since the last video, the class schedule grid, to help students easily navigate all of their JT Learn sites. And then I added the feature builder for myself. I know that's not something students will be able to see, but that will help me add material as needed. And that is it.